Alright guys, welcome to another video in my series of Maya. So today we're going to talk about UV texture placement. We're going to run through a project real quick. This tutorial may be a little bit longer than the others. So now just remember that with this tutorial, go ahead and create your project. I think we talked about that in a whole other, I think that was our first video, so please see the video where it talks about how to create a new project video. You can find it down here. Well, I mean, this is how you would go into a section, but review that video if you don't know how to create a new project, and if you do, that's great. And don't forget to set your project as well, which we've already done here. So we're going to make a serial box today, and to do that, go up here from your modeling section to create, and go to your polygons and to cube. So this is going to be just kind of a simple modeling tutorial and texturing. This model is not going to be too overly detailed. This is just going to be a simple poly cube, and we're just going to kind of shape it to like a rectangular form, so it kind of represents a cereal box. So so we're going to do that. We're going to use our scale tool. There we go. Okay, and it's a little thin. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Okay. Go a little bit taller. Maybe a tiny bit wider. Okay. Now, always check your orthographic views, because modeling in the perspective camera can be deceiving. What you might think is actually spot on could be actually a little bit, a little bit off, or a little bit flat, or it just, you want to do that. So here we are in the front view. It's not too bad. I'll go with it. Okay, so now that we have that done, we'll just save our scene. So get into, we talked about the importance of saving our project. So I like to always go to this here where it says save scene as. I don't like to use this too much where it says save scene, because you don't know what you're saving in general. You could be overwriting a very important file. I like to do the other and make sure that you're in the scenes folder. So this will be the kind of the sign if you set your project or not. And if not, refer back to the video or how to create a project. We also go into how to set a project in that one too. So this one, I'm just going to name it serial 001. Actually, I'll put serial box modeled, and that'll leave a note for me what stage that is in. And file type, I like Maya ASCII or MA is what they call it. You get to do more with it, I guess. I just like it. Others like .mb. I like MA. Hit save. So this is with the student edition version. Your version of Maya could be different. I think I have Maya Light on this, but it's a little bit heavier. And I just, for the purposes of this video, we're just going to do student version. Now, if you're using 2020 version, that could be different as well. So just take note of that. All right. So hit continue. Okay. So we have our box modeled, and we have the file saved. So we need to check out basically how to map this. First, we're gonna go to your hypershade first, and we're gonna do something before we do anything else. Go to your rendering editors, hypershade. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a shader from an image, and we're gonna create a shader and place an image in the shader, and we're gonna drop that shader onto our box. Okay. And I haven't really made a texture yet for this object, but this is kind of me just making a point of something, which we're going to do in a segue in a second. But this is just kind of something I'm going to do. Okay, if we take a shader, and first off, before anything, let's create a shader. I'll go back here in a second. Go to create materials in your hypershade. And this one, I'm going to use a Fong. Lambert, it's a little too flat, I think. I wouldn't do blend, cause, I mean, it's a cardboard box, you know. Now, you know, with the type of images and, you know, the material they use for cardboard now, it's a little tiny bit shiny, so I'm just going to use Fong. Okay. And then don't forget to name your shader. So I'll say cereal box Fong. Okay. And that way, if somebody needs to grab that file, they can easily grab it. Okay. So this is the section of your color. We're going to just use a color map for this process. I don't know too many cereal boxes that have bump maps unless it's a special occasion or special graphic on there or something. And hit this checker box right here. Click on that. Okay. Now, you do a lot with this, but for our purpose, we're going to hit this right here, File. Okay. Now, it didn't really do anything. Well, now it does. Okay. So, in this section here, where it says image name, it's looking for a file. Okay. It's looking for an image file, photograph, texture file. Okay. Now, click on the folder here, and we got to look for that. Okay. Now, it's looking for source images. I think I placed the actual image in the image file. So let me copy this real quick. And I know it's not perfect. We'll go into that in a second. Sorry about that. I had to go back in and place the folder. Sorry, I had to place the file in the right folder. Okay, so this was just kind of an unfolded image. This is probably one of the worst textures that you would ever want to use. Don't do it. This is just to prove a point, basically, okay? So if you go click on the folder, click on the image, and hit open, okay? Now, notice how it's actually generated now. Okay, so it's connected with your Fong shader. Okay, so there we go. It's in there. So what we're going to do next is click on your model, right click, hold down. Go all the way down to assign existing material. This is great because we actually named it. We can easily find it. Okay. And give it a second. Make sure when you go to shading here, click on hardware texturing. Okay, there we go. Alright. So, if you throw an image file on there, you know, you never know what you're going to get. It's not mapped. Okay? And there's no label. I mean, it's in there somewhere, but look at how it is. It's all upside down. It's disproportionate. It's not what we had hoped for. We have to tell Maya basically what to do, how to lay this out properly. Okay. Now, if we go to UV section, UV editor, okay, it looks nothing like this. It can't do this for you. We have to tell it to do it. Okay. Now, to do that, and still, you would never make a texture like this. There's a very specific way to do this. We'll go into that in a second. Okay. For right now, we're gonna start basically doing 2D projections. So you'll find that here, planar, cylindrical, planar, and spherical. And for our purposes, we're going to use the planar. Okay. Now, you click on the option box. It's going to bring this up, and you want to select. You don't want to select best plane bounding box is best for this option. Sorry, for this project, and you want to pick the proper angle or camera axis or directional axis. We're going to project. Okay, so you can predetermine that. So see right here where it says the axis is. Z is going to be looking at the box right here. Okay, we're going to face the box. So we want to select Z axis. Okay, select your face, just the first one. All right, and we're going to hit project. And if we go into our UV editor, we're going to deselect our image, and kind of notice that the orange square is actually the face that we had just made. That was the projection we just made, I should say. Now we got to resize it for sure, because it's the whole entire workspace here, and we don't want that. You can use the scale tools. And we know it's not that wide either, so let's go ahead and reshape it. Okay. Now, this is going to be more than likely your, how do I say this? This is more than likely going to be your most detailed area. This is the front and back. And then next would be your labels on the side for your nutrition. Okay. So there's the front. So the front will go on the left, right will be the back. So let's go to the back real quick. Select the face, click on the back, okay? Same thing as before. We're going to use, in this case, the z-axis. It's just going to be mathematically negative, but we don't need to know that. Well, it'll be backwards basically, but we don't have to do anything about that right now. Hit project, and then go to UV editor. Oops. UV editor, and there's the next one. Okay. Now let's try to make it even with the other one. Call it at that. Okay, and then lay it next to that one. Okay, now the other one, notice the other squares. You really can't tell what they are. Can't tell if the front, back, left, right, up or down. So we have to tell Maya. And also, whoever's gonna, if you're gonna pass this project on to somebody else, you gotta tell them too. So we have to do that. So let's start with the left side. Okay, and make sure you have your face selected. Now this is going to be a different direction, so we're going to follow the red arrow, and that is going to be X. Okay, so we go to our UV planar, go to your options box, and we're going to project from, it's kind of like taking a photograph. Basically we're making telemetry, I guess you could say, or a map. You can also think of label, like a product label. But think about it kind of like as if you're sewing. If any of you in this that are watching this video have ever sewed, you're laying out basically your pieces of cloth before you sew it all together. If you're gonna make like a doll or a plush toy or something. I think I made a plush toy for home ec when I was 13, and you really want to make sure everything's organized, and this is kind of the same thing. So project on x-axis, okay, and go to UV editor. Alright, so there it is. It's in bright orange. Now you don't want it that big because that is not going to be the way we're going to do that, and you don't want it so wide. You don't want to have distortion, basically, okay? Now, in this, for right now, I'm just going to make it a little bit long. And I'm just going to project it first, and then we'll go back and reorganize it in a second. This is going to be your workspace. Just get the projection done real quick. So we'll do the same thing for the other side. Select the face, UV editor. Oops, sorry, not UV editor. UV planar options. Okay, hit x-axis. Okay, same thing. Okay, and just to double check. And I'm making this kind of tedious because just for the beginners who might not know how. Okay, and just kind of disclaimer, I am not an expert at this, but I hope to at least help you out a little bit, okay? Okay. Now, right now, I haven't fully organized it all. I'm just kind of taking care of the pieces first. You definitely never ever want to have them overlay like this at all, okay? Can cause some problems. More than likely it will, okay? Alright, so put this into a projection, and instead of Z or X, you're going to go to the UV planar and go to Y. And hit project, okay? Because Y is up and down. Alright, and go to your UV editor. Oops. Here's the other one, but I want to make sure I do a projection on this rather than just taking for granted that this may already be done for me. So we're just going to do that real quick. Let's go to the underside of this box, and we're going to make sure we have our face selected. Okay, and then hit UV planar. Make sure Y is selected. Hit project. Okay, that makes me feel comfortable knowing that I got that done. Let me select this box real quick. Figure out what just happened. Where did it all go? Okay, there it is. Alright, so here it is. Now we got to resize this guy right here, and I'm gonna make him kind of tinier. Okay, now we got to make some decisions here. Alright, so we have to basically ask ourselves how we want to organize this map, okay? The first thing you want to do is make sure your front and your back sides are going to be the biggest. That's going to fill up the most space of this map here. And the reason why is because they're going to have the most detail, the biggest space. It's going to need the most resolution, okay? So, at the same time, we got to fill in the other parts. So, it's going to take a little bit of work to make sure this is done. This is part of making a UV map. And also follow your professor on this, or your teacher, or whoever's in charge of this project. And because this is going to be kind of general, Maya is kind of like one of those programs where everybody's going to have a different way of doing something. So the benefit is, I think, the easiest. It's not going to take 3 days to do this. Like 3 days of continuous work without sleep. If you're doing that for this, reconsider your workflow. Okay, so I am going to. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring these down here. And I'm going to bring these to the top. Now you may have to readjust these later. Sometimes distortion can happen. Now if you want to turn these at an angle, hit the E key after you selected the UV and just simply rotate it. Then hit W to move. You're not actually moving the geometry in this, so don't be worried about that. Okay, this is just kind of like making a skin for your box. Now kind of notice how we're running into a little bit of a space conflict here, okay? So this is just kind of the design and the mental notes that we have to take place. In the process of making this, sometimes people forget what side we're currently working on, and I just thought, hey, what side was that again? And you can easily go back and find it. A lot of times you can go on your go back to your model. You know, you can use wireframe. You know, we can find out. I mean, you can see already it's already highlighted in orange, so that tells me it's actually oops, hypershade. There we are. Okay, so if this is the front, this is going to be the left side. Okay. So little things like that can help out a lot. You know, it'll tell us what's going on in general. Okay. So this is the left. I'm going to design this to where the left side was actually the ingredients. So we probably need a good resolution for that. I'm going to make the ingredients and the nutrition facts pretty big, because somebody needs to read that. Now you don't want to make them too big because it could cause distortion in the image. Okay. These, and just try to fill up the gaps. Try to make them even with each other. Fill up the space. You don't want these too tiny. Okay. And this was our nutrition facts. I think that's technically the right side. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider and a little bit longer. Okay. So that's what I have for this. We'll see how it plays out. What we're going to do for this is we're going to take a UV snapshot. Okay, so we go to Image, from your UV editor, go to Image, UV snapshot. Okay, and we're going to set this to JPEG, and we got to give this a name. Do not call it out UV. Okay, I've seen so many people overwrite this so many times. And the file often gets lost or corrupted or whatever. So we'll just say serial UV 001. Okay. And so there we have it. Now this is going to be the size. Okay. You don't want it too big, because this image will start eating up your memory. If you don't got a lot of memory, that could be a problem. I think I have to look up actual sizes, but I think I'm going to leave it at 512. Okay, and I'm going to keep edge color at white. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm going to do. And then hit apply. Okay, now we got to go find that image. Okay, just a second. Okay, one more thing. So select. Maya's got this little weird thing where basically it won't show up unless you actually highlight all the faces, or the UVs, I should say. Highlight everything. So just click and drag, and make sure they're all orange, and then from there go into UV snapshot. Okay. From there, do the same. Name it. Make sure it's in the right location. So I left it in the image folder. JPEG, and I set it at 512, and you hit apply. Okay, so it's going to ask if you want to overwrite. You say yes. Now just know that sometimes this can corrupt, so you can always go in and try to find it. And I think we had it here. Okay, actually before we do that, we're going to test to make sure we have it opened. Okay, so we're going to go here. There it is. Okay, found it in our image folder. Double click on that, and we're going to use just hit use photos. Every program's different. Some schools only have Photoshop, and there's our image map. It's black, and that is not our label, but this is where your imagery is going to go on top of. So this little white line is going to be the bounding box. Now you do want to cover the white line. This is where making the texture is going to be like almost seamless, but this is going to be a location. Front, back, I think top, side, bottom side. I think it was nutrition label and ingredients label. Okay, so just we're going to switch this over to Photoshop, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we've already gone into Photoshop now, but before we go any further, I am going to go into a quick segue and kind of give you a visual description to what kind of happens. That way, in case you're visually confused to what is going on, I'll show you with a little visual aid. So we're just going to talk about UV mapping. So if we have no context, if you get a little confused, it will be explained in the next portion of this video. So just kind of use your imagination for this part right now. So right now you've made your cereal box. You know, it's rectangular. You know, just use your imagination. There is no paper on this box, or no tape. Alright, so it's going to be kind of grayish. You can still see shadows. You know, it's basically your typical 3D object. No images, nothing too fancy. Okay, so in your shader, you know, you don't want to use your default shader. Make sure you want to use an actual separate shader. Make sure you name it too. Okay, and then in the color section of your attribute editor for the shader, there's going to be a little tiny square window. Next to that will be a little file folder. I'll explain that in a second. Okay, so what's going to happen when you apply a shader with an image, color image map? I'm just going to unwrap this and just use your imagination. So, it's going to look kind of weird. When you apply a shader to Maya, and after you're done modeling it, Maya really will try to by itself map the UV map. But what happens is it really can't tell from what's, basically left, right, up, and down. And things can get kind of scrambled, such as this. So, for instance, this is upside down. Your job as a texture artist, or just applying a texture to an object, is making sure things are properly aligned. If you know in your heart that this is the way it's supposed to be, then your job is to take the UV map, or the UVs I should say, and realign them. Restructure them, put them back together. Things can get really scrambled, especially if it's an advanced model. It will look like it is shattered sometimes into tiny, teeny little bits. Other times, just a few pieces. So once it's done, there's a little bit more work to be done. Your job is to make sure that this texture, in your imagination, has no seam. It'll be perfectly, just nice and smooth. You won't be able to tell that there's basically, an image laying on top of this. It'll just look one with the object. So, to do that, you have to create a very nice, what we call a UV map, I think. And so a lot of typical people, when they're making a box like this, is that the pieces with the most detail are going to be the biggest in resolution. And if we're not going into UV maps just yet, we'll go into that in just a second. But if we have, then you kind of know. Okay, so UV map, front will be here, back will be here, and then nutrition facts, and let's say, the ingredients. So just kind of use your imagination with this. And maybe the smaller parts will be, kind of underneath, there you go. But, it'll be a lot smaller. It'll be like real tiny down below. You want to fill up your UV map all the way around. No blank spaces, okay? So, you want your most detailed pieces to have the biggest size, and the smaller ones that don't put too much effort to giving it so much retail space, I would call it. So, that's kind of our job. You want to make sure that this has the proper resolution, size, so that you can read the little tiny, letters if it really came down to it. That way, the animators or, cameraman can tell, hey, it's a box of Fruit Loops. I can see the label, even though the camera's a little blurry. So, and you'd be able to read the nutrition facts. So, which could be handy if you're making assets for products, that way they don't have to set a box of Fruit Loops, they can just get a digital one, in fact, most cars, I think 90% of the cars now that you see on TV are all 3D, so think about that, it's a way to save money, and that's what I've been told. So, yeah, make sure you align your texture. This is going to require Photoshop. Make sure no seams, and make sure it's not so far away. If it's so far away, quite literally, you can't read, the little letters, bring it up closer. Give it more retail space to show itself. Okay, and that is pretty much it. Give yourself some time on this because this can take some time. Now, this is more pertaining to planar mapping, and this is good for a box. If you want to do like a soda can, I'm probably going to do a soda can later in another tutorial, but that's going to be more cylindrical mapping. And those are kind of like tools. to help you kind of, untangle the UVs. I've seen UVs where just they're completely like twisted, and those planar mapping, cylindrical mapping, it kind of helps untangle things, realign things properly. So, but anyways, let me just make sure that I do not own Kellogg's. Do not. Okay, I'm just using this as a little bit of a visual aid, and this was the best way I could find it. So, that's pretty much it. And, once you're done, you can actually have a snack. Alright, talk to you guys later. Alright, let's continue with the next step. Alright, so now that we're done with that segue, we're going to continue on. And now we got to basically overlay images on Photoshop. So I am not a Photoshop expert, but at least I can get you through a little bit. So if you bring up Photoshop, you open up your file, and this is kind of you're gonna have to require some knowledge in Photoshop before in this. So, but if anything, you can bring up the image by going to File, Open, okay? And we're gonna look for the image. So it's right there in your, make sure you go to the proper folder, and there it is. Open that up, and it'll bring this up. Now, I'm probably not going to get too fancy with this. I'm probably just going to take this image here, and we're going to basically cut out the parts that we need and slap on the other one here, okay? Alright, so what we're going to do is first just going to trim this down a little bit. Start with that. I guess overall this is going to require a lot of different things. It really depends on the situation. Did I go to the right one? Sorry guys, got something going on here. Okay, and once you're done with that, just hit enter. Okay, so we kind of trimmed it down a little bit, but we need to go into more finer detail. So I'm going to start with the front label. Go to your Lasso tool and just kind of cut this out. Sometimes this may require a Cintiq, well, not Cintiq, a drawing tablet basically. So whatever you do use, just make sure it's clean. Using a mouse is a little bit difficult. Start getting this weird line. So it's going to take a little bit of time. What I'm going to do for myself is I'm just going to do the Marquee Tool. And this is just for instructional purposes, so I'm not going to get too fancy with this. I just want it nice, clean, and make sure everything's in there. I think it's pretty good. Okay. And I'm going to cut this out. I'm just going to, well, actually I'm going to copy it. Don't cut. Oops, I forgot. Okay, make sure you have your layers selected. Hit Control C. It should copy that. I'm going to drop it in. Hit Control V. Okay. Whoa, that's huge. Okay, two different images with two different resolutions. It's going to scale this down a lot. Okay, so Now make sure you use, it's probably more funner to use your own, design label for a cereal box. It just kind of makes sense. So we scale it down, and we're going to just drop it in. Use the little squares to click and drag to fill in the space. So we got that one there. Hit enter. Okay, so bam. Okay, now you do notice something though. It is a little bit off. Okay, we'll try to fix that in a second. Go to the other side. This is why you probably don't want to use a photo like this. So same thing for the other side. Hit Control C, Control V. Whoa. Go to Scale from Transform. Hold down Shift and click and drag and hold down. Okay. Shift kind of keeps things proportionate, so you don't end up having distortion when you use transform scale and pull it down. Okay, but we do gotta kind of distort this a little bit to fit our UV. And we're just making an image. Nothing that we're doing here with the empty boxes is going to affect Maya directly just yet. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so I think left side we were going to do nutrition label. Kind of keep in mind to not use an image like this for a texture. So just kind of, oops, not that happen. Make sure you copy the right section. Come on now. There we go. Same process before. This one though, we're going to rotate. Go to Transform. To rotate this, you can go to sorry, hit the mic. Go to Edit, Transform, Rotate. Okay. And when you're happy with that, move it in. You can only rotate with this one, but hit Enter, and we'll start changing the overall scale of this, and get that done too. Now you're probably going to have to move these because, at least I'm going to have to, because the images are kind of askewed. Maybe I could fix that real quick. Alright. just gonna get rid of that, and more than likely this too. So cut that right out. Now if you actually have an actual label, you can, it's probably better to just use a scanner, you know. So it'll just make your life a little bit easier. It really will. Okay. Okay, so there we are. So it's kind of corrected. I'm going to scale this down one more time. There we go. And just kind of lay it right on top of the other guy. Okay. Alright, then you hit enter, okay? Same thing for the other side. I'm going to go to our ingredients. I'm probably just going to trim this down with the Marquee Tool a little bit. Maybe get this video going a little bit faster. So we're going to start going in and actually cleaning up our texture now. So we can use different tools. We can actually use the Polygonal Lasso tool. And we're just going to follow just about right there. I'm just going to cut it off and hit enter. And make sure you have the correct layer selected down over here. Hit delete. That'll cut it off. Now that kind of gives me an idea basically of how much I need to adjust this. If you right click over the image here, select pixels, it'll give you an almost an exact, well pretty much exact selection, and go down to transform, and we're just going to skew this a little bit more so it just fits right over our, basically our UV. And not sure if it's going to work. And then I'm going to select scale. So actually, going to scale that up a little bit. I'm not too sure why it's doing this, why the pixels are all the way over here. My thoughts are, oh, okay, we have another part over here, that's why. Jeez. Okay, we can fix that in a second. No big deals. I'm just going to Marquee Tool this and go to transform, scale, and just kind of fit it over a little bit. And don't be afraid to use a magnifying glass slider. I'm just kind of trying to eyeball this. Okay, and so we have that. We have our ingredients box. Sorry, ingredients side. It's a little bit blurry. When you do this, get a better image file. I wouldn't really recommend what I've done. Like for instance, you can find them on Google if you want to test something out. You can find actual labels for cereal boxes, just to kind of practice with. So. So this will be the top portion, and let's fill that in real quick. Oops. Hit enter, and we're going to flip this around. Hit enter. Go back to transform. I'm going to scale this guy to what we need. I'm going to drag him over first. So things are kind of coming together. Now you can kind of see what's going on here. Go for that one. Now he is a little off. Let's see if we can fix it real quick. Actually, first I'm going to zoom in. So he is a little off. And we'll get the last part, and we'll throw that onto our actual cereal box and go from there. Actually, I think for this one, since it's kind of like this weird angle, I'm probably just going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. So click here, here. Makes a nice like Marquee Tool where it's just based off of flat sides that you can make geometric shapes out of. Kind of handy. Alright, and then hit Control C. And I'm going to drop them in, but I'm going to bring them up at the top layer. Back out real quick because I need to see what I'm doing. I think I dropped them in. Okay. Control V. You're coming to the question whether you've copied something or not. You can always go to Edit, Copy, and it should copy what's in the marquee here. There we are. Okay, and hit Control V to paste. Do the same thing again. Use the scale tool. And we're probably going to have to adjust this just like before. That's fine. Zoom in. That window is basically just to tell me how to, if I want to make the changes or not. Rotate this guy a little bit. I'm probably going to have to change this by skewing it a little. Okay. It's getting old. It's getting there. While doing this, you can hit Control. It gives you a little bit more finer pull on this rather than such a rigid one. Okay, and I wonder if we can use the Stort to get this a little bit better. I think I'm getting it pretty much. It's going to take a little bit of work. This is part of, texturing, making a texture map. That's better. It's not perfect. So once you get that going, go ahead and go back to your scale tool, fit it over at the top, and we should be pretty much almost done with this. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. You're probably going to have to go back on this. Just do the same thing, make sure there's no lines that may not be covered. I'm sure there's probably going to be some issues with this already, but from now, what I would suggest with this is save it as a PSD file, Photoshop document, because it's kind of like a project file. You can go back and see your layers. Not everything will be finalized. It'll be all set apart. Basically, you have a workspace to go to. So go to File, Save As, and so Photoshop document, I'll throw it in the image file, I guess. Or you can always throw it in the source image. I probably want to do a source. So go to Serial. Let's go to Source Images. Okay, and we'll say Serial, Texture, and then the .psd will tell somebody like this was the Photoshop project document. So, yep, hit Save. Okay, and then, hit OK for maximize capability. Okay, and then we're going to save this also as a JPEG, and that's what we're going to use in Maya, okay? So let's say serial texture, make sure it's .jpeg, hit save, okay? Alright, and that is for now pretty much it. So now I'm going to go back into Maya. I'm going to minimize this, okay? And we're going to go back to Hypershade. If you don't have it down here, go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. Okay, and you want to select your texture. Go down to Color, click on this guy since it's already kind of opened up where we can place an image map. Click on the folder, and we have it right here, serial box texture.jpg. Now we get to find out. Oh wait, wasn't it? Because we did. Okay, make sure you have the right one selected, and make sure you clearly label. We'll have to change this later, but this is the one we're looking for, serial texture. Okay, and hit open, and there it is. It's in it. Let's check out our box. Well, okay, so this is kind of the trial and error process. Now it is going to need a little bit more work. So it looks a little bit better. We got our front, got our ingredients. Now it's going to look a little, make sure, like I said before, to make a proper image. So the photograph I took off my phone does place this in. It's a little bit skewed. So you're going to need to follow your professor. Basically you want to have a proper image. But you can find them on Google too. Follow the same process. Now look at this though. This was actually not what we had intended. This is actually the bottom of the box. So this is kind of the trial and error process we're talking about. Now we can, since Photoshop is still open, we just could swap these out. Okay. let's go ahead and do that real quick. So I know this one's over here. And this guy's over here. Okay. Now we gotta resize them, of course, but that won't take too long. Just do it before. Okay, use your scale tool. And I am pretty much 100% sure this is not going to be even. I mean, we even have our nutrition facts labeled. You can already see it's kind of skewed over. Maybe I can correct that while I'm here. I don't think I'm going to be able to too much, because we are dealing with limited negative space, you know, with the blue here. But at least it can make it a little bit better. Maybe we can actually warp it instead. Getting there. Okay. Almost happy with it. And then gonna finish it up with scale. Alright, and since we saved this as a PSD, we'll hit save, because we know it's PSD, and then we'll hit save as for the JPEG. We can use the same one as before. So switch this over to JPEG and hit zero texture, save. It should update in Maya. So when it says, do you want to replace it? Yes. I'm going to set this at maximum for 10. I know it's not really needed, but why not? Go back to Maya. It should update. If not, we can show you how to update too. Okay, there's our frosted flakes. Did it do it? So it has not updated yet, and that's fine. Go back to Hypershade. Okay, so you just gotta go back and reopen it. So it's a little better. I mean, it could use some cleaning up still. Not too bad. I could see a little bit of distortion here, but that's how, you know, you jump back and forth between Photoshop and, you know, Maya. You know, cleaning up the little edges and stuff like that. So this is how a representation will look like through the perspective camera. Now to do a render, you want to make sure you have a light, and you also probably want to have a like a floor for this, or a table. Okay, so go ahead. We're just gonna do this real quick. We're not gonna do anything too fancy with this because we have to get into lighting and everything, which we're gonna do in another tutorial. So create a plane, okay, and from there we're just gonna create a single light. This one I'm probably gonna just do. We'll just do directional light. It'll be a little bit more simple. So it's going to bring it to the midpoint. Oops. Sorry, we've got some memory issues here. Ow, it thinks that I still have the spacebar on. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure, it's a little bit of a bug in Maya today. I am going to select, hopefully, this object here. Alright, sorry about that. We had a technical issue. Okay, so nothing too big. So we have our box here, and just to kind of recap, we have a box and our floor. Okay, so basically we're going to do a quick test render. We dropped in our light, I believe, last time we were talking. So we were able to basically grab the light. You can either do it from the outliner, and then you hit W, and you can rotate it into place. So you can hit the E key and direct it to what type of angle. It gets a little bit more advanced when you start using like spotlights. So we're just gonna, we don't want to like direct it like right at the light, because then the box kind of probably will have this like milky color, like surface texture. So hopefully I'm just gonna just maybe closely towards it, but not like at it, Okay, and we're not really going to talk too much about lighting. We'll do that in another project, another video. And we're going to do a quick render on this. More than likely, I assume that we're going to, and you can kind of see it already here. You yourself can go and readjust your texture later on through Photoshop. I'm not going to provide, the project file or any of the imagery, because it just, that's on your own. But we kind of gone through everything pretty much. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the UV editor, and we'll take a look at our serial box. I forgot to select it. There we go. So there's our box. Okay, everything's laid out. Now, if things go wrong, like, you could try to manipulate the UVs. If you hit right click and select UV, you can actually individually select each UV and use your W, E, and R keys. So directional, rotational, and scale, and you can move them. So you can move them, and it'll affect how it looks in real time in the perspective camera. Okay, so let's see if maybe I can get that in there for you. Some reason today my memory is not my actual physical memory, but the memory in my computer is a little slow. I'm not sure why. I've heard of major critical updates in Windows, so maybe that might be why. So let's see. So see how on the left here, if we change the position of the UV, it'll actually affect the texture. Okay, so little things like that could mean a lot of things. If something's crooked, or you know, something's just not right. What you're basically going to be checking for is you're looking for just kind of unusual. How do I put this? I don't want to say like stretchiness, but your texture should not be stretching too much. It should not, be disproportionate. You want to try to avoid things being cut off. I think this looks like it's cut off, but I think it's because the box is actually underneath the floor, and we can change that in a second. But you just want to look for anything unusual. Weird angles, things like that. It looks pretty good. Maybe this nutrition label box needs to be tweaked a little. Let's see if we can do that real quick. Alright, so it looks like this part here needs to be changed a little. I don't think I'm going to be able to fix this, but it's never hurts to try. A lot of this is just trial and error. You'd be surprised how many times you might have to go back and refix something. Texture placement, or painting textures, or creating textures, or creating color maps could take some time, and just something you have to expect. If you did it right the first time, that's kind of rare. This is something that has to be kind of dialed in or properly sketched, and I think I might have got it. At least it's a little bit better. It's a little bit more upright. Now, the one thing I do see, look at that, it's backwards. Alright, so in this case it's backwards. Okay. Sorry, let's see, my allergies are bad today too. Okay, so what you can do is select all 4 of the UVs, okay? Just click and drag the Marquee Tool to highlight them, and you'll know they're highlighted when they turn green. A little trick that we can do is we use a scale tool. And we're going to just kind of scale it so it flips it. Actually, we can't do that. Let's see. Maya won't allow us to flip it by scaling. What we can do is just simply move it. Okay, so what I'm just doing then, in this case, I just flipped it around by moving, and we're almost done with this video, and I'm glad I was able to help you out with this. Something is eating up my memory. I think it's an update. I know that there's a progression bar in Maya that has not gone away, so I think it may be some kind of update with Arnold, because I had to turn Arnold on. I had to turn on the plugin. So what we're going to try to do is just try to bring up this texture and pretty much call it. So this wasn't the most perfect texture, but it did work, I think, as an instructional purposes. So if you look at the box in the perspective camera, let's see if we can pull it just a little bit more. There we go. Alright, so it got corrected. So that's your job as a texture artist, is to make sure things are a little bit better aligned. Check for errors. I mean, we found a big one right there. I mean, it was completely backwards, and so we were able to reverse it. And you can just simply I thought, you can either rotate and just flip it. That wasn't a option, and I thought, well, we'll just scale them and flip them around, and that wasn't an option either. So I just selected the top UVs and dragged them down, and the bottom UVs, vice versa, dragged them up, and that took care of the problem. So this is something that will take a lot of time, and so keep plugging in with this, and let's see if we can do a quick render to kind of see how it works. And it's going to be like a constant process of just redo. Just keep re-rendering. And you got to play with your lights. We're going to go into lighting later. But also at the same time, you got to go into your hypershade. I'll show you that in a second. But you have to like lower your reflectivity, because it's a cardboard surface. Unless it's got I think one of those laminate, like wax laminates on the cardboard, it's not going to be too reflective. And you have to lower your, I'll figure it out in a second. It's like a specularity. You want to drop it down really low, and I'll show you that in a second. Alright, so now you can kind of see how it's looking. So we did a little quick render, and so it's not too bad actually. You can tell what cereal it is, who's on the box. It wasn't the greatest texture that I had to work with, especially from a photograph, but I mean, considering the, things I had to do, wasn't that bad. Now, this does take a while, I can sit here and stop the recorder, but it took some time, it was kind of a new copy of Maya too, so I had to, turn things on, turn things off, import, I had to actually import Arnold, so that did take some time. So little things like that, and then set up my workspace. So these things happen. So be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared to set up your workspace. Be prepared for things to happen that you wouldn't anticipate. So don't start your project at the last minute. I could tell you that for a fact. Things will happen at the last minute that you would not understand or could ever expect to happen. It's Murphy's Law. So this is what we have. This was a Fong, but we dropped down the specularity. And let's go into that real quick. If we go into Windows, Rendering Editors, and go into Hypershade, a lot of, you can put in your texture, you can put in your shader, and things still might not be right. You're playing off of not only your light, your texture, and your shader. So here's the shader that we have, cereal box, it was a Fong, and so notice how that the specular color I dragged almost completely off, okay? And the reason why I did that was because if we drag it up, notice how up here, which is just kind of a visual representation, notice how waxy and shiny that is, okay? So I just dragged it down. I don't actually have numbers right now for this, but just know every object and every scene is going to be different, so that's why this takes a while, okay? And I dragged the reflectivity down as well. So that was pretty much it. That's pretty much what I did to kind of get it, not so shiny. Just think of specular as the shininess. It's not really the reflectivity, it's mostly the specularity. And that's pretty much it. We have a box of cereal. So there we go. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section of this video. Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. If you have any other requests for videos, let me know. I think next we're going to do the soda can. And that's it. Tell your friends about this section. Oh, also, If your professor has like a better way, or just in general, always follow your professor. Okay, I'm not a professor. I have not been like officially blessed or ordained to be a professor yet. But if they tell you to do something, make sure you follow their directions. Okay, this is just kind of a helpful tutorial. If you liked this, maybe you took something from it. If you don't like it, then I think there's an old saying: take what you need and leave the rest. So, I hope you enjoy the video. Have yourself a wonderful day.